Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Senker.
Yes.
Mr. Mumford.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We'll move on to the minutes of the February 9th, 2016 meeting. What's your pleasure? Mr. Bonso,
Yeah, I move that we approve the minutes as read.
seconded by Mrs. Stickley. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Senker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumford.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We do have one request to address council, but it is regarding the ordinance about the 3-foot passing, so I will defer that until right before that, the reading of that ordinance. We'll move on to reports of standing committees of council. And the first is the Committee of the Whole regarding streets and streets levy, dated February 16th, 2016, to the Honorable Council of the City of Norwood, Ohio. We, your Committee of the Whole, to whom was referred streets and street levy, beg leave to submit the following report. Discussion took place regarding the condition of streets and potential funding sources. It was decided to not pursue a streets levy at this time, but to place the matter of street improvements into the Streets Committee for further study. Respectfully submitted, Donna Lake Chairperson, Mr. Bonsall, Mr. Clark, Mrs. Stickley, Mr. Blair, Mrs. Hanahan, Mr. Sanker, and Mr. Mumford. Mr. Mumford.
I move the committee report be accepted.
Seconded by Mr. Clark. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Senker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumford.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. The next is the Committee of the Whole report regarding electric aggregation, dated February 16th, 2016, to the Honorable Council of the City of Norwood, Ohio. We, your Committee of the Whole, to whom was referred electric aggregation, beg leave to submit the following report. Councilman Bonsall will investigate how other communities pursued aggregation and with what companies. Several companies who offer aggregation will be invited to council for the April 12th meeting to make presentations on how their programs operate and what benefit it would provide our citizens. Respectfully submitted, Donna Lake Chairperson, Mr. Bonsall, Mr. Clark, Mrs. Stickley, Mr. Blair, Mrs. Hanahan, Mr. Sanker, and Mr. Mumford. Mr. Clark.
Move that the committee report be accepted.
Seconded by Mr. Blair. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Senker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumford.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Next is the Committee of the Whole report regarding Metropolitan Sewer District, dated February 16th, 2016, to the Honorable Council of the City of Norwood, Ohio. We, your Committee of the Whole, to whom was referred Metropolitan Sewer District, beg leave to submit the following report. Mr. Moore reported that he continues to investigate this matter. No decision can be made at this time regarding placing payments into escrow. The Law Department will keep us informed of this ongoing situation. Respectfully submitted, Donna Lake Chairperson, Mr. Bonsall, Mr. Clark, Mrs. Stickley, Mr. Blair, Mrs. Hanahan, Mr. Sanker, and Mr. Mumford. Mr. Bonsall.
I move that the committee report be filed.
Seconded by Mrs. Hanahan. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Senker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumford.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Next is the Law and Ordinance and Human Resources Committee regarding mobile signs.
Thank you, Madam President. Law and Ordinance and Human Resources, dated February 10th, 2016. To the Honorable Council of the City of Norwood, Ohio, we, your Committee of Law, Ordinance, and Human Resources, to whom was referred mobile billboards, beg leave to submit the following report. Request that the Law Department provide guidance on interpretation of existing Code 1321 on whether the police or building departments have jurisdiction for enforcing such code. Respectfully submitted, Tammy Stickley, Chairperson, Mr. Clark, Mr. Sinker.
Mr. Clark.
Move that the committee report be accepted.
Seconded by Mr. Mumford. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumper?
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Next is a committee report from Finance, Budget, and Audit regarding 2016 appropriations. Mr. Sanker.
Thank you, Madam President. Committee report from the Finance, Budget, and Audit dated 2/18/16 to the Honorable Council of the City of Norwood, Ohio. We, your Committee of Finance, Budget, and Audit, to whom was referred to 2016 appropriations, do beg leave to submit the following report. Discussed on how to prioritize payments of bills over the next few months. Payroll for the end of February may be pushed into the 1st of March due to cash flow, and we heard from the police chief about the need for cruisers. Respectfully submitted, Joe Sanker, Andrew Clark, John Mumper, and Tammy Stickley.
It's your pleasure, Mr. Mumper.
I move the committee report be accepted.
Seconded by Mr. Blair. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumper?
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We'll move on to the second reading of ordinances, and that is the discussion for Mr. David Cutler. Would you like to come forward and address council, sir? If you'll give us your name and address, and then you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is David Cutler. I live at 4300 Ashland Avenue. During my decades-long working career, I was a regular bicycle commuter for the majority of that. And I still bicycle almost daily during the warmer half of the year and quite a bit during the winter too, weather permitting. I have rain clothes and some cold weather gear. I bicycle for errands, volunteer work, to and from some social activities, and for recreation all over Norwood and over much of the Cincinnati area. I think the proposed ordinance is unnecessary. All other things being equal, I think a 3-foot clearance is usually a good idea. But it is one thing to publicize a good idea and another to have a rigid ordinance. A driver or a bicyclist can already be cited for negligent or reckless driving of a vehicle or a bicycle. Remember, bicyclists are already required to follow traffic laws and safety procedures in the streets statewide. Streets in Norwood, like elsewhere, are of varying widths and degrees of busyness. The intelligence of vehicle drivers and bicyclists does not need to be insulted by a rigid 3-foot ordinance. They can be trusted to use good sense, each keeping in mind they are sharing the road with each other. Rather than draw a 3-foot line in the sand, daring the others to cross it, drivers can be trusted to know that bicyclists need reasonable clearance, and bicyclists can be trusted to know that drivers may have difficulty passing bicyclists in some situations, as when there is heavy traffic and there are few openings in the next lane for them to offer a full 3-foot clearance, though they may be able to pass the bicyclist safely, with somewhat less than that amount of clearance at a slower speed. If it were the case that most of Hamilton County's 49 governmental jurisdictions had a 3-foot law, then I would say Norwood should adopt the ordinance to make things consistent. But that is not the case. If a statewide 3-foot law were to be adopted in the future, then so be it. Norwood police can be trusted to enforce it just like they enforce other state laws. If you really want to do something reasonable that is helpful to bicyclists, it is the little things, and they don't require an ordinance. They are things like when it is time to buy a new supply of spare storm sewer grates, or when contracting for a new development, use grate openings arranged that can't trip bike tires, or when upgrading or installing a new traffic-actuated signal, make sure the sensors can sense bicycles so the bicycles can get a turn at a green light going their direction. or making sure that the more treacherous potholes are repaired effectively and in a timely manner. These policies can simply be enacted by the city administration, and over time, as upgrades, new construction, and street repair occurs in the city, the situation for bicyclists will improve. But I don't think things are bad for bicyclists now in Norwood. And as far as the examples I just gave, I do want to note that I don't think our existing storm sewer grates are a big problem, and I don't presently have trouble getting my turn at a green light when I'm bicycling here in Norwood. And along the same line, I find that most drivers pay attention and give me ample clearance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. We'll now move on to the second reading of ordinances, and this is an ordinance amending section 331.03 of the Norwood Codified Ordinances, overtaking 3-foot passing distance from bicyclists, driver's duties, and amending section 313.09, driver's duties upon approaching ambiguous or non-working traffic signal.
Yeah.
Mr. Bonso,
Yeah, I move we have the second reading of said ordinance.
is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Sanker. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes.
Mr. Mumper.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Please have the second reading.
Ordinance amending section 331.03 of the Norwood Codified Ordinances, overtaking 3-foot passing distance from bicyclists, driver's duties, and amending section 313.09, driver's duties upon approaching ambiguous or non-working traffic signal.
I'll move on to introductory readings of ordinances, and that is the ordinance that we added, an ordinance authorizing the safety service director to apply Safe Routes to School Travel Plan project funds and to enter into a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation and declaring an emergency. Mr. Clark,
I move that we suspend the rules and have all 3 readings of this ordinance.
seconded by Mr. Blair. Is there any discussion? Mr. Sanker.
Yes, Madam President, if you could please maybe give a little background for the folks who are not quite as familiar with this program as some of us are.
I would be happy to do so, or Deb Robinson is
I didn't
here.
know
Would
she-
you
Deb's
prefer
here.
to hear
Yeah,
from
Deb's
her as
here.
opposed to
Yes.
me?
I didn't see
Deb,
you back.
and I want you, Deb is sick, she has the flu, and she came tonight so that she could give you this information. So
Good.
I told her I thought I could do it and she should stay home, but she's a wonderful person and she'll give you all the information.
Well, we've had this discussion several times about safe routes to school, and this is an ongoing process. You might remember about a year and a half ago, we were here with our partners from Ohio Department of Transportation and Kleinger's Group, who did a really elaborate display and discussion for us of all of the things that were on the school travel plan, which amounted to about $1.9 million worth of service improvements, infrastructure improvements. And the Ohio Department of Transportation allows you to apply for up to $400,000 a year for these improvements. We applied last year, we were selected, and they've begun the process of getting all of that work organized and ready to go. And so now we're in the process now of going down our list and selecting the next set of things that kind of add up to about $400,000 and then applying for that. So that's what we're here today to do, is ask to have the ordinance so that we can submit our application. What questions do you have?
And I know I would, if I were you, I would question about the 100% coverage of any overages. In our first round of funding, there were things that we cut back on.
We did.
Because they were a little bit higher. There's a process that you go through. So the engineers came out and looked. Deb and I were there. Mr. Gears was there. Mr. Tuppy was there. And actually looked at the projects. So we cut back on some of those because they came in thought they would come in a little bit higher. There is an inflation built in, and there's a 10% or 15% overage built in. We will back those off to make sure that it doesn't go over, because we made it perfectly clear we don't have any money to
Right.
match. And I have the items that were funded last year and the highlighted. We did a lot, we're gonna be doing a lot in front of Williams with the first round of funding.
Yeah, Williams got a chunk of that, and what we've asked for cost estimates on this year specifically are some things that are in front of the middle school. While it's in front of the middle school, it serves our kids that go to Sharpsburg also, because we have quite a few kids that make that long trek. So that seemed like a good kind of combination of things to move that forward.
And a lot of, in Sharpsburg this year, that was the one school that parents felt was the most dangerous. A lot of these things include upgrading the crosswalks, so the ladder-style crosswalks, upgrading of the traffic signals so that there's the buzzer, so that there's the countdown, and half of our crosswalks don't work, I think, in the city. So at least where the kids are coming to school, they're gonna be replaced with the newer ADA, the signs that have the audible as well as the visual countdown. So it's those types of things. Some of those require replacement of poles. Mr. Tepe was very instrumental in helping us with that. So,
And I don't know if you all are aware, but last week, we had a middle school student who was hit by a car on his way to school. So we know that even our older kids need these supports.
Mr. Senker, you have a question?
Yeah, then when does this need to be filed?
March 4th,
So it's imperative that,
it is. It is.
We were both of the understanding that we wouldn't have needed to do this until our project was accepted, and then we were notified, no, we needed to do it with the application. Hence my frantic emails to you today, and I wanted to acknowledge Mr. Moore and the law director's office, thanking them for putting this together within a day, so.
And I appreciate that also. This is $400,000 worth of infrastructure work to our city, which is really important, and I think that it's valuable. It's not just valuable to our kids, and I was listening to David talk, and I thought, oh, some of these things are going to be exactly what he was saying. So that's a good thing, too.
Do you have any other questions of Ms. Robinson? Mr. Clark?
I just want to thank both of you for your work on this. I think it's great. And then I just want to say, my question is, how long does the application process take before we would hear back if we're approved for the next round?
Last year, they told us we would find out in May. We didn't find out till July. So,
Just curious.
summer-ish.
Okay.
And I don't know how many people applied, but there were only 2 in Hamilton County that got them, and we were one of them, and the other one was Woodlawn, so.
That's great.
Yeah,
So $400,000 was too much to
it is.
let go by, so.
It
That's
is.
what we decided we were gonna try to do this. Hopefully that you all would think positively of this tonight, and thank you for your compliments, but I'm gonna put it right back to Deb, because she's the impetus behind this. I just follow her lead. Truly, I follow her lead.
There are a lot of people working really hard to make good things for our kids in our city, so I appreciate that, and we can apply every year. So
have
now
plenty
we
of
know
projects
better
we're
about
gonna
the
do.
ordinances, so we know that won't be an urgency kind of thing next year, but we'll apply until our travel plan is complete. So, any other questions?
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted
Mr.
to comment.
Bonsall?
Yeah, so, I volunteered just a little bit on this Safe Routes to School plan last year, and I just want to say Deb is just fantastic. I mean, like I said, I did so little. I mean, hardly any. Deb was coordinating many things. Donna was at some of the meetings as well, so just thank you for that, and thank you for that, just for the children of the city. I mean, for the work that you all are doing, and just the support the school system's
Thank
giving
you.
it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go home and go to bed.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you. The motion on the floor is to suspend the rules. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Senker.
yes,
Mr. Mumper.
Yeah,
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Please have all 3 readings.
Ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to apply Safe Routes to School travel plan project funds and to enter into a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation and declaring an emergency. Ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to apply Safe Routes to School Travel Plan Project funds and to enter into a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation and declaring an emergency. Ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to apply Safe Routes to School Travel Plan Project funds and to enter into a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Bonzo,
I move that the ordinance be passed.
seconded by Mr. Clark. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mrs. Hangerhan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
Yes.
Mr. Mumper?
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We'll move on to introductory readings of resolutions. The first is a resolution declaring the necessity of levying a tax for current operating expenses in excess of the 10 mil limitation and requesting the county auditor to certify matters in connection therewith and declaring an emergency. Mr. Mumper,
I move we suspend the rules, have all three readings.
seconded by Mr. Blair. Is there any discussion? Mr. Sanker.
Yes, Madam President, just a little note of explanation, and you can elaborate as well. We have a 5-year levy that's been on the books, an operating levy for the past number of years. It expires next year, and so basically this is a renewal of what has been on the books for these years. There's no increase at all. It's just a renewal as we had done 5 years ago. We renewed this for I forget how many times, but it is a critical to the operating expenses within the city. And I said it is strictly a renewal. We figured we'd have it on in the general election in November. It's a little in advance of when, it's not really required till next year. But if we figure we'd get on it in advance, so we're not, we're down to the wire next year trying to squeeze something onto a ballot and having some special election. So with the general election going on, and it should be a pretty popular election, I would say, in November, we figured we'd get a better feel from other residents by, putting it on at the general election here in November. So if you'd like to explain a
As
little
I
more.
announced a few meetings ago when I filed the financial report at the Board of Elections, I was told that the earliest we could put the renewal on the ballot was this November. I think in an effort to be transparent and let as many people as possible know about it. Many times some levies get accused of being snuck on as a special election, and we wanted to be transparent and put it on. So in a presidential election year, there are going to be more people likely to vote. I think it will also assist council in planning finances for the next couple of years as we try to work our way out of this financial situation that we're in. So again, it is a renewal of the levy. The earliest we could put it on was November, and we just wanted to do it this year and get it out of the way. Any other comments? The motion on the floor is to suspend the rules. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mrs. Hannigan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
Yes.
Mr. Mumper?
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Please have all three readings.
Resolution declaring the necessity of levying a tax for current operating expenses in excess of the 10 mil limitation and requesting the county auditor to certify matters in connection therewith and declaring an emergency. Resolution declaring the necessity of levying a tax for current operating expenses in excess of the 10 mil limitation and requesting the county auditor to certify matters in connection therewith and declaring an emergency. Resolution declaring the necessity of levying a tax for current operating expenses in excess of the 10 mil limitation and requesting the county auditor to certify matters in connection therewith and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mumper.
I move the resolution be passed.
Seconded by Mr. Blair. Is there any discussion? Mr. Moore, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but can you explain why we're doing this now and how that there's 2 resolutions required for this? So people don't think we're going to come back with another one later on and have 2 levies?
Sure. The process is, first, council passes a resolution asking the county auditor to do some math. And the county auditor does math on how much it will collect at a certain millage, how much it will cost a person who owns a house that's worth $100,000, and we'll send those numbers back here, and if council thinks it's a good idea, council will then pass another resolution to actually put the levy on the ballot in November. So it's a two-step process. This is step one.
Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? The motion on the floor is to pass the resolution. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonville.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes.
Mr. Mumpert.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We have no administration reports. We do have other requests to address council. Pastor Sonny James. Good evening.
Good evening, Pastor Sonny James, 1830 Hopkins Avenue, here in Norwood. First, I want to commend Madam President for acknowledging one of our fine civil leaders and workers in our community that's struggling in his health, and I pray that we as residents can join in prayer, not just for him, but for his family as well. The second thing is we have a lot of great things happening in our community. I love it when we come together and show a unified approach and effort. Recently, Mr. Clark gathered residents and clergy together, which again kind of falls in line with the 13-point plan that I've issued to the city. But Mr. Clark took the initiative and gathered folks together, and we just simply prayed over our city leadership, our police, and the families of Norwood. And I just want to commend him because it's very important that we bridge the gap between people. And whatever it takes for all of us to start working together as a community, we need to do that. And I commend him because the first place, obviously, I'm going to say, is in prayer. So I thank Mr. Clark for doing that. I also want to commend our city. Recently we had a snow, and all over the radio, all over the communities, you would hear, "Oh my God, don't go outside. The roads are ferocious." Yet in Norwood, our roads were about the safest roads anywhere. Montgomery Road was so clear. In fact, as I traveled, as most of you know, I travel my fine community anytime, day or night, even 2, 3 in the morning, just making sure our community is where it should be. And I was very impressed with how our city attacked that snow and made our community safe to travel and to pass. So I just want to commend Norwood for being on top of it. Now, with that being said, a couple of years ago, and I'll be brief, I came before council and I challenged, and I know we have funding and budgeting issues, but I'm coming back again because as we saw just recently, if we don't put attention to our young people, these issues that we have just come over a hump with, they're not going away. And as we saw how we addressed water and other things, there are ways that we can find the money. So I'm going to be coming again saying we've got to get on our financing and our budget, and I know we've got great leaders working on our budget, but we've really got to look at alternative things to do for our young people. And that 13-point plan that I've issued to you, if you will take time to sit down and just come and talk. Right now we're working with another municipality, with the city and the police, and we're doing tremendous projects. I want those projects here in my own town, here in Norwood. So I'm urging you again, give me a call. Let's sit down and let me walk this thing out. I don't think there's anyone in our current council that has the exact direct experience that I personally have been blessed to walk out. So I want to work with my city leaders. So please give me a call or email me at pastorsonnyjames@gmail.com. That's SONNY. Or call me 513-487-8843. Let's get ready because the summer is coming. And of course, as closing, the police had a difficult time stopping some of the crimes
in my area of town. We went out marching personally, and now over Sherman Market area, it's very nice. So let's not let young folks or anybody come into our community and tear down the fiber of what we stand for this summer. So God bless you all. Thank you so much. And again, let's keep praying for each other and being transparent and walking this thing out together. God bless you. Peace.
Thank you, Pastor James. We will move on. There are no other requests to address council, so we'll move on to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Mr. Clark.
I just want to announce, as Pastor James was saying, we'll be having another prayer meeting for anyone who would like to join on Saturday, March 5th at 1 p.m. and we'll start on the City Hall steps. So any believer that would like to come out and join us, resident, city official, anyone who would like to join is more than welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Is there any other unfinished business? Mr. Sanker?
Yes, Madam President, just following up on the finance report that we had earlier, we did have some discussion at the last meeting in regard to, with the cash we had available, what, if anything, we were able to pay. And I know Mr. Stith has sent a letter out yesterday to all the department heads that, with the available cash that we have at this point in time, that this second payroll here in February would probably be pushed out to the 1st of March. That being said, we're still watching what we can pay, and we'll be having another finance meeting in the next week or so to kind of look again at what we're able to pay and to try to keep somewhat current, well, for the most part, current with some of the bills that we have outstanding. So we'll be in contact on that as far as having another meeting, hopefully sometime next week. So just a little follow-up on the finance report.
Thank you, Mr. Sanker. Is there any other unfinished business? If not, we'll move on to new business. Any new business? I'm trying to find my email and it's not pulling up. I received an email, just as an FYI, and I will get it to the clerk's office and get it to you all as soon as I can. I received an email about the Lindner YMCA. There's a proposal to, apparently the finances at the Lindner YMCA were pretty critical, and there was some discussion about potentially closing down the YMCA. So there's a plan on the table that they want public input on, is that there's a group who is working with all the gymnastics in the area. Several of the YMCA's have gymnastics teams, and as they travel around the rest of the state of Ohio, they have spring floors, and none of the Ys here in Hamilton County have those. They just put pads down as the girls and boys tumble. So there is a move that would serve two purposes, apparently, to take the Norwood or the Lindner YMCA gym and turn it into a gymnastics facility where people from all over, the girls and boys who are at the YMCA's all over Hamilton County would come to Norwood and use that gymnasium as a gymnastics facility with the spring floor. They would do air conditioning and all that other stuff in there. The concern was that what would you do with basketball and what do you do with those kids in the summer who are there for the summer programs? And apparently the Y has secured an agreement with a local gymnasium. I'm assuming it's the one across the street from here because I said it was just around the corner from the Y and it was at a church. So that the summer programs for the kids who come for summer daycare could still take part, and there would still be gyms, basketball courts for the kids to play with. They're having a community meeting about it, and I want to say it's March the 3rd. And I just can't, my email's not working. But I will get that out to the clerk's office, and if we can post that and have some, just if there's some public input, they just, they want some input on it before they proceed, so. Yes, Mr.
I received a text message about this today from a former resident of the Fourth Ward, and I told her to email me the information to my city
Well,
email.
hopefully your email.
And I don't have that on my
Your
phone.
email is not responding.
I don't have that on my phone, though. So.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Sanker.
Yes, Madam President, one other thing under new business. I've had a couple people inquire about, hearing rumors about the church on Cortland Avenue as far as being converted into condos. And as yet, the building hasn't been actually sold as yet, and that the plans, to the best of our knowledge at this point, are all just in discussion, and I think the feelers are out there, but there hasn't been anything really done, and the neighbors will be contacted if it is something that's going to be requiring, public input. So at this point in time, it still is kind of in the discussion stages, but it hasn't been sold and/or nothing's really been moved forward on that as yet for some of the folks who have inquired. So.
Thank you, Mr. Sanker. Is there any other new business? Okay, we will move on to communications. The first is a letter from the tax department regarding monthly earnings tax report.
To Norwood City Council. Attached is the monthly report for January 2016 indicating collections in the amount of $1,523,734.65. This reflects a decrease of 5.5% from 2015. Yearly totals are also shown. Should you have any questions, please contact the Earnings Tax Department. From Chuck Barlow, Earnings Tax Department.
Pleasure. Mr. Mumford?
I move the letter be received and filed, and I'd like to ask the Earnings Tax Department to get to work.
Seconded by Mrs. Abraham. Can you relay that message? Is there any discussion? Mr. Sanker?
Yes, Madam President, just a little sidebar. For as much as we're down 5+% this year, that from last year, at this point in time last year, in 2015, in January versus 2014, we were more than 5+%. I believe it was closer to 8% ahead of 2014. So we're already starting off, 5% behind where we were at this time last year. So hopefully it'll start picking up quick. So.
Is there any other discussion? The motion on the floor is to receive and file the letter. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hammerhand.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Monk.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Next is a letter from the Liquor Control regarding Capital Grill. You have this one? So we have letters back. There is a notation that the secretary to the clerk of council sent letters to various departments. Usually those go, for those of you who don't know, we get a request from the Ohio Department of Liquor Control Board. Letters are then sent to police, fire, building, and health departments and tax departments for their comments to see if they have any objections. So both the fire department and the building department sent back their notices that they have no objections. I'm assuming we have not heard back from the others. I have a question, Mr. Moore. The Capitol Grill's been in existence for a while. Why are we just getting this notice to the legislative authority? Do you know?
I just assumed it was a renewal. I didn't actually look that closely at it. I don't have no idea why not, why we wouldn't have gotten it. If it's not, it wouldn't be the initial one.
I don't think so, but usually we do the renewals at like the same
Altogether,
time every
as a group,
year.
right,
all of
so-
them.
Yeah, I just was curious why we.
So they've been operating without a liquor permit all this
Or
time?
maybe it's a change, I don't know.
There's no change of ownership, but I mean, there may be a different change in the class.
Okay. So, what is your pleasure? Mr. Bonso?
I move that we receive and file the letters.
Is there a second? seconded by Mr. Blair. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan? Mr. Sanker?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumford?
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We have no absent members. Mr. Clark,
Move that we adjourn.
seconded by Mr. Blair. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan? Mr. Sanker?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumford?
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned.